Welcome to HD Reddit Stories. If you enjoy heartfelt, true-to-life stories, we'd love for you to subscribe and tap the bell. Thanks for being here. Let's get into today's story. I arrived early, not out of excitement, but out of quiet suspicion. Something in my gut had told me they'd do it. That they'd finally make it official. The sun poured down over Harvard Yard like it was blessing everyone but me, students buzzing in caps and gowns, proud parents holding bouquets and glossy programs. I held nothing. Not even an invitation. My name is St. Caldwell. And that day, I stood just outside the entrance tent watching people pass by, wondering how many of them had received the version of the day that included me. The answer was none. When I spotted them, my parents and Callista, I slowed. My mother wore a pale blue suit and that familiar frozen smile she saved for photo ops. My father, Everett, had his phone in one hand, blazer in the other, always looking busy. And Callista, well, she looked radiant. Robe, honors cords, hair perfectly done. She was Harvard's favorite daughter. She always had been. They didn't notice me at first. When they did, my mother's eyes scanned me like I was someone vaguely familiar from her tennis club. "Oh. Sin," she said flatly. "You came." "I got the invitation," I replied, even though I hadn't. "I saw it on someone's Instagram story." She gave a thin laugh. "You must have seen a forwarded version. I wasn't sure the RSVP list made it that far." My father didn't say a word. He just checked his watch. Callista opened her arms for a brief, hesitant hug. I leaned in out of instinct. "You look amazing," I told her. "Thanks," she murmured, her voice low. "I'm glad you're here." But her eyes flicked toward our mother, as if checking to see how much warmth she was allowed to show. I glanced at the wooden easel near the entrance arch, where a seating chart had been posted. "The Caldwell family," it read in cursive script. Beneath it, Everett, Astria, Callista, plus 2 guests. My name was nowhere. A staffer handed me a badge. White background. Plain black font. One word, guest. No crest. No ribbon. Nothing. I stared at it longer than I should have. 20 years ago, I helped design the Caldwell family crest with my mom. We spent a week choosing the right typography. Now, I wasn't even worth a monogram. I should have walked away. I should have had enough pride to leave. But instead, I clipped the badge onto my jacket and walked into the tent like a ghost invited to her own funeral. The ceremony started at 11:03. I sat alone in the back corner next to a toddler and an old man who slept through most of it. Professors spoke. Deans droned on. My heart beat louder than the applause. Then my father stood. He adjusted his tie and approached the podium like a senator about to deliver a game-changing bill. "Today," he began, "we honor the brilliance and perseverance of our eldest daughter, Callista. Her journey has been nothing short of extraordinary." Applause. Flashbulbs. Callista looked down, pretending to be modest. But he didn't stop there. "This day also marks a turning point for our family," he continued. "A necessary shift in energy, values, and alignment." I felt it before he said it. The cold prickle at the base of my neck. "We have made a difficult decision," he said. "And from this moment forward, we will no longer extend ourselves to those who do not reflect the integrity and vision we hold. That includes our youngest daughter, Senior." There it was. Delivered calmly. Deliberately. Like a policy change in a press release. Silence. No gasp. No protest. Just a few awkward coughs and rustling programs. I didn't stand. I didn't shout. I sat with both hands on my knees, every nerve burning with a mix of shame and clarity. In the row behind me, someone whispered, "Did he just say?" Another voice hushed, "Who does that at a graduation?" I turned my face away and stared at the white tent wall. The rest of the speech blurred. Something about legacy, weeds, and roots. I heard none of it. Eventually, I stood and walked out. Not rushing. Not shaking. Just moving. At the reception, I approached the Caldwell table. The name cards shimmered under white linen. Callista. Aunt Miriam. Even Callista's college roommate. But nothing for me. A girl from my middle school blinked when she saw me. "Oh, hey. I thought you weren't coming. Your mom told everyone it was a closed family celebration. Said something about keeping the focus clear." On the table sat a folded ivory card. I picked it up. It read, "Congratulations to our only daughter, Callista. With all our love, Mom and Dad." I didn't feel my breath catch. I didn't cry. Instead, I picked up a glass of Prosecco from a passing tray and walked toward the back exit of the tent. A woman in a floral dress passed me and frowned. "You must be with catering. You're not wearing the family pin." I glanced down at my badge. Guest. No name. No title. Just, a placeholder. That's when I knew they hadn't forgotten me. They hadn't overlooked me. They had erased me. But what they didn't know was that I had already started collecting the truth, piece by piece, quietly. So while they smiled for cameras and sipped champagne, I smiled too. Because they had just made their statement. Now it was time for mine. I didn't go home right after the reception. Instead, I walked aimlessly through Harvard Square, past packed cafes, families clinking glasses, and students hugging goodbye. A little girl holding a crimson balloon walked by, her parents laughing beside her. I kept walking. I wasn't sure where I was going, only that I couldn't return to the silence of my apartment just yet. It wasn't until the sky darkened and the red brick buildings faded into shadow that I finally boarded the T and let the train carry me back to Somerville. At home, I dropped my shoes at the door and stood still in the middle of my small apartment. The silence hit me like a familiar slap. Not loud. Just sharp in its loneliness. I tossed the graduation program on the counter. It fluttered open to a photo, Callista with our parents, smiling like a magazine cover. The caption beneath read, "A proud moment for the Caldwell family." There was no trace of me. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor, an old high school yearbook open across my lap. It was Callista's graduation, 10 years earlier. My mother had told me not to come that day either. "It's not your moment," she'd said. I turned to the tribute pages in the back. There it was, a custom message and photo. To the daughter who never gave up. "We are so proud of you, Callista." The photo showed our front porch in spring, Callista, Mom, and Dad. But I remembered that photo. I had been in it too. I stood beside Callista in a dress my mother picked. She yelled at me for wrinkling the waistline. In this version, though, I had been cropped out. Cleanly. Without a trace. That's when it truly clicked. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was methodical. They didn't forget me. They deleted me. I didn't cry. Not really. I got quiet. And when I'm quiet, I dig. That night, as the rain started to tap gently on the window, I pulled my laptop out and sat at the kitchen table with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The screen cast a pale blue light as I opened folders I hadn't looked at in years. There was still a shared Google Drive from when I did part-time accounting work for the Caldwell Foundation. They'd never revoked my access. I was the one who set it up, after all. Typical. I clicked through old files, donation records, budgets, tax forms, absently, until I found a folder labeled holdings_updated. Inside was a file named Transfer Authorization, Seaside Property, Final.pdf. I opened it. There, on the third page, was my full legal name, above a signature. A signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. The S was too flat. The loop in the L too wide. The rhythm of the pen stroke was wrong. My stomach dropped. I pulled open my drawer and found an old lease agreement I'd signed years ago. I compared the two signatures side by side. They weren't the same. Not even close. Worse still, the authorization form had been notarized. By Savannah Caldwell. My cousin. I froze. That house, the seaside property, wasn't just any house. It was the summer home in Bar Harbor. My grandmother's legacy. The one my dad left me a stake in his will. The one I had helped repaint during college summers. The one where Callista held her 30th birthday and turned it into a bonfire party for 50 people. And now, legally, I own nothing. They had forged my name. Erased me from a deed. This wasn't just betrayal. It was fraud. At 3 a.m., I called the only person who had ever treated me like I mattered, Aunt Mavis. She answered on the third ring, groggy and confused. "Sen, honey? Are you okay?" "No," I whispered, tears suddenly prickling behind my eyes. "I found a property transfer with my name, but it's not my signature." There was a pause. Then a long sigh. "Oh, Sen," she murmured. "You saw it. You knew," I said. "Hi, your mother said it was just tax paperwork. She said they were cleaning up the books. I thought they'd tell you eventually. I thought maybe you knew they were removing me from the deed." Another pause. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have told you. But you know how your mother gets. And your father just follows. That line? You know how your mother gets. Like she was a weather pattern you just endured, not a person with choices. I'm tired of excusing them, Aunt Mavis." "I know, baby." Her voice cracked. We sat in silence together, listening to the rain. Two women mourning the same family for different reasons. When the sun came up, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, sat at the kitchen island, and began cross-referencing everything I could find. Local property registries, archived PDFs, trust documents. It wasn't just the Bar Harbor house. It was the trust too. A portion of the Caldwell Family Trust was being funneled into something called Harlow Holdings LLC, a company registered to a business attorney in Boston. A quick LinkedIn search confirmed it. Callista had tagged that attorney in a post about launching her new boutique investment firm. They had used my inheritance to fund Callista's career. No board meeting. No family vote. No notice. Just a silent, clinical extraction. That afternoon I needed air. I walked to the bookstore 3 blocks away, hoping to think in a space that didn't glow or buzz. As I rounded the corner of the self-help aisle, I heard it. "Son!" I turned. Mrs. Henderson, my mother's friend, stood with a book titled Aging Gracefully Through Faith. She smiled the way people do when they've already judged you. "I heard Callista's doing so well." She beamed. "Your mother said she's expanding into luxury real estate. Isn't that just wonderful?" I blinked. "Funny. I thought that house was still ours." Her face flickered, recognition, embarrassment, guilt, all at once. "Oh, I don't know the details. You know how parents are, always making moves without the kids." I stared at her. "No. They're making moves against their kids." She shifted uncomfortably, then offered that signature society lady smile. "Well, I'm sure it'll all work out." I walked out. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed with a text from an old college roommate. "Heard your folks sold the summer house. Callista's killing it. Jealous of her life right now." Jealous. That word festered. No one envied what she lost to get that life. What she allowed to be taken from me. It wasn't just a house. It was history. Summer nights with sea salt in our hair. My grandmother's porch swing. The deck I helped repaint. It was the last thing my father gave me before he died. And now it was gone. They forged my name to take it. And that was when I decided, if they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, fine. But I wasn't going to disappear quietly. They didn't just erase me. They triggered something. And I was going to answer. I didn't start with anger. I started with receipts. While the rest of the world moved on from graduation season, congratulatory Instagram posts, champagne clinks, and teary family portraits, I stayed in my apartment with nothing but silence, a stale coffee mug, and the sound of my fingers tapping across the keyboard. I wasn't rage posting or screaming into the void. I was watching. Reading. Saving. There was still a shared cloud drive that connected to the Foundation's archives, one they forgot to revoke my access to. I'd built it years ago when I helped streamline their back-end systems for donor audits. I guess they assumed I'd forgotten. Or maybe they thought I wouldn't dare look. They were wrong. I didn't sleep much those first few days. I didn't bother showering unless the sun rose. I buried myself in folders, PDFs, emails. At first, it was a mess, duplicate files, old tax forms, gala seating charts. But once I filtered by upload date, the pattern began to emerge. Trust documents had been quietly amended. Properties reassigned. Donations rerouted. A marketing memo circulated internally describing legacy branding that omitted my name and image entirely. They didn't just delete me emotionally. They deleted me financially. Legally. Publicly. But the part that finally made my hands shake wasn't the documents. It was the audio. One of the files in the drive was labeled Donor Meeting Prep, Spring. I clicked on it, half curious, half numb. My mother's voice came through first. "We only use Callista's face in marketing. Sin doesn't photograph well with our narrative." Then my father, chuckling softly. "She used to read everything." I paused the file. My stomach flipped. They'd erased me assuming I wouldn't be paying attention. Well, I still read everything. That night, I gathered it all: forged documents, the deed to the Bar Harbor house, the transcript of the notary affidavit from Savannah, internal emails, and yes, the recordings. I printed everything. I made backup copies. I encrypted files into a hard drive I wore on a chain around my neck like a relic. Then I slipped the contents into a velvet envelope, dark burgundy, trimmed in gold. It was the same one my mother gave me when I was 12, filled with calligraphy stationery. The note she included said, "Always write with grace." I intended to. But grace doesn't mean silence. The next morning, I stood outside the office of Warren Bell, the Caldwell family's longtime attorney. The last time I'd seen him was at my grandmother's funeral. He patted my back and told me I was brave for coming alone. Now, as he opened the door and saw me standing in the lobby with that velvet envelope in hand, I watched recognition flicker across his face. And then concern. "I need 2 minutes," I said calmly. He nodded, ushering me inside, closing the door behind us with a soft click. "I'm not here to yell," I said, placing the envelope gently on his desk. "I'm here to deliver this. Inside you'll find notarized affidavits, a trust challenge, forged signature comparisons, and audio recordings. Each section is indexed. There's also a link to a private digital repository with time-stamped files. He didn't touch it. Just stared at it like it might bite him. This comes with expectations? He asked. No, I replied. It comes with consequences. I left before he could speak again. Back at home, I sat on the floor near the window. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel afraid. I felt cold. Focused. Like everything around me had dulled except the pulse in my jaw. I'd waited a long time to be heard. But now, I didn't need their ears. I had a microphone louder than any of their speeches. I called my lawyer that evening. Philip was young, sharp, and not afraid to go against legacy names. After one look at the documents, he asked only one question. Do you want revenge? No, I said. I want acknowledgement. On the record. And I want them to stop pretending I don't exist. He nodded slowly. Then we begin. Within a week, the lawsuit was filed quietly in family court. A petition to freeze trust disbursements. A claim of fraudulent transfer. Request for audit. A separate complaint filed with the state attorney general. And still, I said nothing. Not online. Not to Callista. Not to anyone. But someone did. Because exactly 11 days after I left that envelope on Warren Bell's desk, an article appeared on the front page of Charity Review, a national nonprofit watchdog publication. The title read, Luxury Charity? Anonymous sources question integrity at Caldwell Foundation. My phone vibrated once. Then again. Then a third time, rapid and urgent. I didn't answer. I sat on my couch with the article glowing on my screen. The story didn't name me. It didn't need to. The evidence spoke loudly on its own. It referenced board memos, financial inconsistencies, anonymous internal sources. And then, it quoted the audio. We only use Callista's face in marketing. The other one doesn't photograph well with our narrative. She used to read everything. Within hours, the foundation's Instagram comments were flooded. Where did the money go? Who approved the house sale? Nepotism at its finest. By noon, 2 major donors had issued postponements of future collaborations. Still, I said nothing. The next morning, a reporter from DC called my cell. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't interested in giving them a quote. I didn't need to become the voice of injustice. I only wanted the truth to breathe. Callista never called. But she posted a photo that day, standing in front of a flower wall, captioned, Legacy isn't inherited. It's earned. The comments didn't go how she expected. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Then came the PR email. From the same firm that once handled gala invites. No subject line. Just, we're preparing a unifying statement. We'd love to include a quote from you. Your voice matters. I didn't respond. I just archived it. That night, I received a text from a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Your parents just called an emergency board meeting. You okay? I stared at it for a long time. Yes. I was okay. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. The following week, the court date arrived. Nothing dramatic. No courtroom theatrics. Just fluorescent lights, tired benches, and the sharp scent of old carpet. But to me, it was a cathedral. Philip stood beside me, flipping through the file. Across the aisle, my parents sat stone-faced. My mother looked like she was chewing glass. My father glanced at the floor. Callista was scrolling her phone. The judge was a woman in her 50s, hair pinned neatly, eyes like steel. She called the hearing to order. Philip stood. Your Honor, we respectfully submit Exhibits A through E into evidence. They include notarized property transfers, a forensic signature analysis, original trust language, and supplemental recordings relevant to exclusionary actions taken against my client. No one objected. The judge flipped through the documents. Her expression shifted only once, at Exhibit D. The original will of Elise Caldwell. It named me, Sim Caldwell, as the primary beneficiary of the Bar Harbor property and all inheritance disbursements from the Caldwell Trust. The judge looked up. Was this properly notarized and witnessed? Yes, Your Honor, Philip replied. By the legal team that was replaced shortly after this document was filed. Everett, my father, cleared his throat. That version was never meant to be the final. The judge held up a hand. Intentions are not law, Mr. Caldwell. Documents are. Callista stopped scrolling. My mother's face paled. Philip played the audio next. She doesn't photograph well with our narrative. She used to read everything. The judge nodded, taking notes. Then my mother stood, voice sharp and trembling. You ungrateful girl. You waited all this time just to destroy us. I stood too. Not angry. Just steady. I waited so I wouldn't destroy myself in the process. The room fell silent. Then the ruling came. The Bar Harbor property shall revert to Miss Caldwell. The Caldwell Trust will be frozen pending a full audit. The court will refer financial irregularities to the state attorney general for review. Callista grabbed her bag and walked out. My father didn't move. My mother sat down, spine rigid, staring forward like the world had cracked in half. Philip leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. Not because I won, but because I was finally, undeniably seen. 6 months later, I stood barefoot in the middle of a sunlit room that didn't even exist the last time my parents spoke my name aloud. It had once been an abandoned municipal library on the edge of Providence, red-bricked, its windows dust-fogged, roof lines sagging from years of neglect. Most people passed it without looking. But when I walked past it 3 months after the courtroom ruling, I saw something else. I saw possibility. I saw a space that could hold the very stories people like me weren't supposed to tell. Now, that forgotten building was filled with voices. Laughter. Scratchy audio from old speakers. Marker caps popping off. Paint drying on tiny canvases. This was the Caldwell Literacy and Arts Center. Named not for the family that erased me, but for the one who had once told me I belonged, my grandmother Elise. The plaque mounted in the entryway was the only thing I'd insisted on making formal. It read, "In memory of Elise Caldwell, for the granddaughters they erased, and the ones who refused to stay erased." I often found myself lingering by it. Not out of pride, but reverence. She would have loved this place. There were no gala gowns, no curated photo ops. Just mismatched folding chairs, beat-up art tables, and kids with notebooks filled with dreams no one had taught them to silence yet. The grant money came from the court-ordered return of my share of the trust. The Bar Harbor property was now fully under my name, mine to sell, rent, or burn if I wanted. I chose a quieter path. I renovated it, yes, but not for profit. I turned it into a writer's retreat. A soft place for young women from foster backgrounds who had been left out of family photos, of scholarships, of dinner tables. Who needed a page to speak when no one would listen to their voice. The first 2 residents moved in last month. There was no press release. No newsletter. No press kits. Just a handwritten note sent with the wire transfer to the retreat's new director. Make sure it goes to those who were left out of the pictures. I hadn't been back to the Caldwell Foundation. Not once. I didn't need to walk past the glass walls and framed headlines to remind myself of who I wasn't. The court's ruling had frozen operations indefinitely, pending state audit. The gala invitation stopped. The donor brunches went quiet. Last I heard, the PR firm dropped them altogether. But Callista, she surprised me. The envelope came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. No return address. Just my name on the front, in her signature slanted cursive. Sharp. Controlled. Still hers. Inside was one sheet of paper. "You were right. I'm sorry it took this to see it." That was it. 10 words. No flourish. No justification. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Some words aren't meant to open conversations. They're meant to close chapters. I placed the letter inside a small lockbox, alongside 2 other things, the original family crest pin I'd found buried in a drawer during the move, and the velvet envelope that once held my receipts. None of them held the same weight anymore, but I kept them anyway, not as proof of pain, but as record of growth. Because now, I had my own crest. My own name. And it didn't need permission to exist. I hadn't thought much about the graduation ceremony since the court date. But every now and then, the image would flash, the stage, the badge that read guest, the champagne toast to our only daughter. I didn't regret attending. I regretted hoping, even a little, that something would have been different. That hope was finally gone now. Not bitterly, just released. One afternoon, I was helping one of the younger girls at the center prep for a poetry showcase when she paused and looked up at me. "Miss Sen," she asked, "is this place named after your mom?" I blinked. "No," I said. "It's named after someone who believed in listening." She nodded like she understood. "Good," she said. "Because if it was your mom, I'd want to rename it." I laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real, unexpected laugh that echoed off the walls. And in that moment, I realized I was free. Not legally. Not financially. But emotionally. Free from the need to be seen by people who only ever looked through me. I used to think healing would come when my mother apologized. When my father admitted what they'd done. When Callista said she regretted it. But healing came in the form of a handmade paper badge given to me 2 weeks later. It was the last day of the summer term. The kids were packing up their notebooks, folding their drawings, saying goodbye before the center closed for a short break. One boy, tiny, with a gap-toothed grin and elbows perpetually covered in glitter glue, walked up to me and held out something in his hand. It was a badge. Folded paper, held together by tape, with a crooked ribbon glued to the top. "This is for you," he said shyly. "Because you showed up." I knelt to his level. "You made this?" He nodded. "It's a badge. For important people. Like you?" I stared at it. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled and said, "Thank you. I think this might be the best one I've ever had." I pinned it on the lapel of my cardigan, right over the place where the Caldwell crest used to sit. This one was better. Softer. Earned. That night, as the sun dipped behind the trees outside the center, I stayed late, sweeping glitter off the floor, folding chairs into stacks, turning off lights one by one. And then I sat in the back row, just to be still. Not to be seen. Not to prove anything. Just to be. Forgiveness, I learned, doesn't always come in the form of a conversation. Sometimes it's in the quiet. In the decision to stop waiting for someone else to mend what they never saw as broken. Some wounds don't get stitched with apologies. Some just stop bleeding when you stop picking them open. For the first time in a long while, the silence around me didn't ache. It held me. And I chose it. Sometimes, the loudest betrayals don't come in the form of shouting or slamming doors. They come dressed in silence, smiles at parties, names missing from invitations, spaces you used to occupy now filled by someone else. It took me years to realize that not all harm is loud. Some of it is orchestrated in whispers and omissions, in the way people look past you even while you're standing right there. I learned that the most painful erasures are not accidental, they're curated. And the hardest part isn't proving that you were wrong. It's proving that you ever existed in their version of the story at all. But here's what I also learned: you don't need their version. You don't need their crest, their badge, their family name polished for donors. You need your truth. And once you stop chasing the people who silence you, you begin to hear your own voice more clearly than ever before. For a long time, I believed that silence was strength. That being the bigger person meant swallowing pain with poise, never correcting the record, never pushing back when someone told my story wrong, or worse, left me out of it entirely. But silence can rot you from the inside if it's forced. If it's weaponized against you. The kind of silence they gave me wasn't peace, it was exile. And the kind I wore wasn't grace, it was fear of losing even the scraps of connection I thought I still had. It wasn't until they erased me fully that I understood the freedom in no longer waiting for approval. The moment they disowned me in public, in front of flashing cameras and strangers, they gave me something more valuable than their name. They gave me permission to walk away without guilt. To stop justifying my existence. To let go of the hope that they'd ever be the kind of family I needed them to be. But walking away doesn't mean walking bitter. That's the other lesson. I could have burned everything down. I had enough evidence to wreck their reputations, to drag them through courtrooms and headlines and make them taste the same humiliation they served me. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration. I wanted to take what was mine and use it to build something better than what they ever offered me. And so I did. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove something to myself. That I could create meaning from pain. That I could give the next girl, the next boy, the next forgotten child a place to be seen. Because legacy isn't inherited. It's constructed. And it's often built quietly, out of moments no one claps for, late-night emails, scraped knees on the porch you painted yourself, whispered affirmations in the dark. I stopped chasing applause when I realized the people I was trying to impress never intended to clap. And once I stopped performing, I started healing. Forgiveness is tricky. People think it's about letting others off the hook. But really, it's about setting yourself free from the version of you that stayed small for their comfort. I don't forgive them because they earned it. I forgive because I don't want to carry their weight into every room I enter. I forgive because I'm too busy building something sacred to hold on to every shard of what they broke. Some wounds scar. They don't vanish. And that's okay. I used to think healing meant erasure, that if I was still angry, I hadn't let go. But now I know healing is choosing not to let that anger dictate my steps. It's learning to hold grief and joy in the same hand and still reach for more. It's sitting in a room you built from scratch and realizing you never needed their approval to belong. If you're reading this and you've ever been the one cropped out of the photo, left off the list, silenced at the table, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not powerless. You may not get closure from them. You may never hear, "I'm sorry." But you don't need their words to write your own ending. Reclaim your name. Reclaim your voice. Reclaim your seat, even if you have to build the damn table yourself. And when you do, you'll discover something quietly revolutionary. You were never meant to fit into their box. You were meant to outgrow it. Sometimes the deepest healing doesn't come from going back to what was lost. It comes from standing in what you've built and realizing you don't miss their silence at all. Because in this new chapter, the only voice that matters is your own.